To be or to be, that's the question. Or, like my South American mom taught me, to be or to sleep. But these are not times to sleep. These are difficult times. Our banks are collapsing, our money is becoming worthless or weightless, and all those things that our parents and grandparents built up, all those things that seemed so secure for so many decades, are suddenly vanishing due to a financial system that nearly collapsed a few years back. The world is in turmoil, and there's not a picture that illustrates the situation better than this one. Here we see New York during Hurricane Sandy. And as you can see, Manhattan is pitch black as the result of a power out. All Manhattan except for one building, the Goldman Sachs building. They had their own generator. And we see these images and we hear our leaders speak about the dark clouds hovering over our heads. And we see our governments trying to desperately hold on to something that's obviously crumbling in front of their eyes. But I believe that this crisis at this particular moment was maybe the best thing that could have ever happened to us. Because difficult times are also remarkable times. And when people come together in remarkable times, they can turn them into exciting times. And I and a whole generation with me grew up in the 90s, when the sky was still the limit. And I remember my prime minister driving with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair on their bicycles along the Dutch canals. And I remember watching my favorite film, American Beauty, in the cinema. And that's a movie that summed up the spirit of the 90s perfectly. We had everything, but did it make us happy? Weren't we too satisfied? And the film's slogan was, look closer, but when we look back at the 90s now, we can ask, did we maybe stop looking at all? And now at this moment that there is this strong need to search for new ways to see things, it's now that my whole generation finds itself blessed with a whole life ahead of us. And on the contrary to what we see so often in politics, we still have the hunger of strong bodies, of young, curious minds, the ability and desire to wonder, but also the courage to doubt their own beliefs. And I think it's those things that really matter if you want to make any difference at all. And my name is Johannes Daniel Christopher Fretz, and I'm the son of Johan Fretz, a white man from The Hague in the Netherlands, and Virginia Brown from Paramaribo, Suriname. And I grew up in a long-stretching suburb called Almere. That's fun for nobody. No. But I learned there one very important thing. That if you live in a place where there's no imagination at all, you are forced to use your own. If there is nothing in a place, if there's no story behind it, you have the opportunity to create your own story. So when I think back about my time there, I feel grateful. And even now, when I walk down the rushed, crowded streets of Amsterdam, I think about this. Never get distracted by the rush and the noise surrounding you. All the things you want to accomplish and your hurry to accomplish them. Or your need, your hunger for confirmation from the people that are supposed to matter. And in a certain way, always stay there. On those long, stretching fields full of nothing, and imagine what you can build up from there. And it triggered in me the strong belief that the power of imagination is so important, or better said, the power of stories. And when I finished secondary school, I went to Amsterdam to go to acting school to become a better storyteller myself as a comedian. And then I got struck for the second time by this power of stories. It was on a cold January night in 2008, and I was watching the television, and I saw a man named Barack Obama standing in front of an euphoric Iowa crowd as he began his first victory speech with that phrase, "They said this day would never come." And I was glued to this television. And I followed that campaign, and during that campaign I learned for the first time that stories cannot only make us laugh or give us solace or hope or move us, they can actually activate us. They can inspire us to become truly engaged in the process of change and progress. And that despite we are on the scale of eternity nothing more than a blip, we can still give the times we're living in meaning and significance. And I believe strongly that we need these stories. And we need the people to tell them. And not only in arts or in politics, we need them everywhere, and we need them now. Because when everything is in a state of disrupt and confusions, it are always stories that are proven to give us a new beginning. But when I looked around me, when I graduated, I didn't see a lot of stories being told. Not in politics, and also not a lot in the political arts. So I decided to create my own storytelling universe. And I launched a project called Fretz 2025. And I wrote a novel, like the host told you already, about a young man bearing my own name that decides to run for office in order to become the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And upon launching the book, I got invited by a popular Dutch talk show, and they gave me the opportunity to speak on their show. So on that particular night, I announced I'd actually be doing it. In front of 1 million viewers, with my friend on his guitar, with the rousing chords, I said, even though I know it's difficult, I still believe we're able to find the ways from dream to deed. And on our way, we will find so many obstacles, but we've heard that enough now. So that's why I refuse to accept the disillusionment from previous generations. And that's why I refuse to accept that our best days are already behind us. And that's why I announce for you tonight that in the year of 2025, I will be running to become Prime Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I invite all of you to reject the political cynicism and to run with me. And I finish with that quote from Obama that always struck me. Raise your voice, because it can change a room. And if it can change a room, then it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if your voice can change a nation, it can change the world. So let's go change the world. And I dropped the studio. I left the studio, and I was so crazy in my head. I didn't know what happened outside there, and I watched my Twitter, and then a crazy journey started. I was somewhere on the thin line between fiction and reality, between theater and politics. And of course, this presidency was more a dream rather than an actual plan. More a theatrical pledge for more imagination in politics, arts, and society than a true ambition. And I made a musical comedy show about it with my friend, and it was about a campaign that kicks off 12 years too soon. A revolution that hasn't started yet. A story about two young men that have a lot of ideals, but not a lot of ideas. And suddenly I got invited by all these talk shows and interviewed by these newspapers, and what really surprised me was that I wasn't being seen as an actor or a performer. They didn't react to the theatrical context, they reacted to the message. Well, I thought, I'm speaking here with a guitar, I'm quoting Obama, I'm making a comedy show, writing a novel. Somebody must have thought, maybe this is a performance and not a reality. But the thing is, I discovered when you tell a story in a real context, like a talk show or an interview, then people, they react to the content and not to the form. If you tell a story, we see the substance, we take it seriously, and we react to it. And the darker side of what I experienced there is that once you are given a place in the spotlight and you're in the public eye, then you receive a similar response in the form of mistrust. Entering the public domain also means that people are going to be suspicious about your intentions. And journalists started to ask me all sorts of questions. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can run the country with a guitar? Are you serious? What are you going to do? What are your solutions? What are you going to do to reduce the deficit, to reform healthcare and education? Come on, give us your answers. Is this serious or is this a joke? Are you really running, or you don't only say this to sell more tickets and more books? And I found myself in a position where I had to defend myself. I had this feeling I had to be a real politician and have solutions, and I started to give really bad, strange answers in the talk shows. But then I thought, of course, I'm not going to be Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and all the answers to these questions don't matter. The whole point of my story was not that it's not about where the road leads you to. It's about asking yourself what the road should look like once it's broken. And to inspire people to look at things a little bit differently, to think and talk about the power of imagination in the hope and conviction that it would trigger in them, in these hard times we're living in, the will and the dare to remain to their own bigger dreams. And to have faith in the fact that despite everything is gone now, we have this wonderful opportunity to start all over again and to create gold out of ashes. It was a story, briefly said, not to win any of your votes. It was a story to make you wonder again and ask yourself, what is the world I would like to live in? Because I think that question should always come first before you can set the goals you want to achieve. And look at us now. We're here today. I'm on this point here. And I think this is one of those rare places like a theater where people come together with all different perspectives and they stand up and share their thoughts. And even if they don't have answers or any idea or clue what they're going to give as a solution for our problems, it's already so worthful and meaningful that they stand up and share their thoughts. Because a story, something you've discovered or experienced yourself, if you tell that to somebody, it can have great significance to another person. And it doesn't start with telling how you're going to solve the deficit or reform healthcare or education. And a story doesn't need facts and figures to have an impact if it truly tells us something we can identify with. If it truly tells us something that makes us look across the borders. So am I asking you now to do the same as I did? And to become Prime Minister of the Netherlands? No, but I ask you, can you be a storyteller in your own craft or profession? Because we live in this time of transition and we need all the youthful spirit and strength to move beyond the old-fashioned power games and to ask ourselves once and again, what is the world we would like to live in and how should our lives in it look like? And we see this already happening on a very small scale, on grassroots level. And now that economy is not on our side anymore, we see these local initiatives again. And we see small entrepreneurs and citizens in our cities, in our neighborhoods, trying to create a community again because they know we are forced in these times to come together around common purposes and not act strictly as individuals. And I know a story isn't enough. Eloquence isn't everything. I mean, if we hear a story that moves us, it's not enough to cry some tears, scream hope and change, and then land on the couch and a couple of years later say, hey, where's the change? The guy that promised us all the hope, he didn't fix a lot. It doesn't work like that. No, their stories are not the change itself. They are the catalyst that inspires us to look for change in our own ways. And I'm not talking about small change, because a couple of more bucks are not going to get us there. I'm talking about the change that starts by daring ourselves to take a leap of faith, to trust in the times ahead of us, and to empower ourselves to make them remarkable or even exciting. And I know that all the clothes, all the books, all the things we buy, we seek, the houses we build and break down, the weight we carry and move will exist longer than all of us. And the sweat of the bodies that we taste, the lips that we kiss, the hands that we wave, the fires that we burn or extinguish, will sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but sooner or later all end up in smoke like we do. But that God's cross is no longer a holy grail, that our home is not longer where the safety prevails, that's probably right. That the earth warms up and humanity without a life vest drowns itself into darkness and despair. But what it's truly about is that we're still able to find the way from dream to deed. So if you stand there and the love of your life suddenly appears to be the love for just a moment, if you travel around the world looking for gold, if you don't become old, if your mouth becomes dry, if your hopes get burned because you hate what you do, your job, your school, and you hear the noise, the sound of the people, the swelling mass that only jumps and runs and rushes and tramps and kills and doesn't ever stop screaming for simple answers, no longer curious to the questions that are asked, then you will still be in the middle of there with your hopes, your fears, your doubts, and your desires. And if you stand there, then please feel freed by the wisdom that without you, all of this will continue to go on for ages. But that only by standing still there, looking, wondering, you can have a meaning out there. Not by counting on too much greatness, but simply by raising your voice. Thank you all for your attention.